Hello, everybody. Welcome to Impactful Coaches, where we talk about productivity, success, and high achievement. In today's episode, we're going to talk about how construction businesses can build authority, attract better clients, and scale profitably. And I'm joined by a construction marketing expert from Australia, Wes Towers, who's the founder of Uplift 360, a digital marketing agency that specializes exclusively on helping construction businesses grow. Wes started off his career as a graphic designer and eventually moved into digital marketing and then started building his company Uplift 360. Over the years, he's understood the problems that construction companies face and he's honed in on those specific problems. And that's what he solves through his company. And in this conversation, what we're going to do is we're going to explore how construction companies, construction founders, whether you're small, whether you're big, doesn't matter, how you can use marketing effectively, how you can go beyond just the referral trap and then build a more predictable and sustainable growth system for your business. Wes, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Harry. It's my pleasure to be on the show. Thanks for making some time today.
Yep, thank you, Wes. It's a pleasure to have you here. All right. I think our audience is pretty much excited to hear how a construction business can go about marketing themselves, right? So, Wes, can you, for the purpose of our audience, can you tell us your backstory? How did you get into marketing? What was your career trajectory like? And how did you end up working with construction companies?
Sure, yeah, really, it feels a lot like accident in some ways. So when I started in my career path, websites weren't really a thing. So it was the 90s. And I chose to study graphic design multimedia at university. I liked the idea of the creative, but also the technical being at that time, multimedia. So I did university and got my first job in a marketing company. And this is how far marketing has changed. That first marketing company, they'd never designed a website. Social media wasn't a thing yet. We only had one computer connected to the internet on a dial-up modem, one shared email address. So this was it was an award-winning marketing company I was working in. And they won a project to design a website, and they said, right, you're the young guy, better figure out how to build this website. We've already won the proposal. So they gave it to me, gave me plenty of time, and I really enjoyed the creative and the technical. It was perfectly aligned for what I wanted. I just didn't know it existed really, because in the 90s we weren't really thinking about websites. By the time I was at uni, we were using websites and so on. But to design them, it just sort of fell in my lap and felt that it was perfectly aligned to who I was. So a few short years later, I started my own business, and really naively, I had no understanding of business whatsoever. I didn't know how to do client meetings or proposals, quotes, nothing. I had no understanding of anything that I had to do, or the legal stuff and setting up the entity and all of that. It was totally foreign to me, but I had a skill set. And so I felt like it was worthwhile taking to market. And I always wanted to start my own business. I had a vision to start a business, but I started a lot sooner than I would have thought I would have, just because opportunity presented itself. There was another guy I knew, tried to start an agency, and it was just too difficult for him. It was too stressful. He wasn't winning enough work, and he said, I'm going to go get a real job. So he was going to throw in his business. And I said, what are you doing with your few clients? And he said, we can have them. And that was the start of my business. Totally small. I had no idea. I had less idea than the guy who just threw in the towel. So somehow fumbled and stumbled my way forward. And it was not a niched agency at that time. I did anything and everything for everybody, like most of us do, just trying to scramble to win enough work to make a decent income that it was at least equivalent to what I was as an employee. So that was the first mini goal, to replace the income. But over the course of the years, I discovered and I understood and appreciated the value of niching in and being really specific and laser targeted from a marketing standpoint. It makes a whole lot of sense. But it was really difficult for me to do that, because it feels as though you're turning away so many opportunities, but realistically, you're just focusing and making more of the opportunities that are ideal fit for you. So, the construction companies were the ones that found me almost. It felt like it was another decision that found me. I think, as I said before, when you've got alignment in what you're doing, it feels like the decision's made itself in some ways. So all of our better clients were kind of in the same fields. And it was through a conversation with a friend of mine who was helping me because we can't see our own stuff all that well. And that's why coaching and consulting is so powerful because no one person has a good understanding and self-awareness without getting input and perspective from others. So he said, what's your best client look like? And I started to describe, and they were in construction. He said, well, what's your next best client? And they were kind of similar. And the third one, they were kind of similar. So he said, well, there's your niche right there. It's pretty obvious. So I dialed that in over the years. That business has been operating over 20 years now. And so, I've learned a lot the hard way. There's lots of lessons to learn. And whilst, hopefully there's some construction companies listening today that might get value, but even if you're not, hopefully people will get value just by the lessons learned the hard way, I suppose, going through the business journey.
That's pretty interesting because I can understand, like, typically there's the 20/80 rule in marketing, right? Or 20/80 rule in business, where when you look at any business and when you examine its finances, you will find that 80% of the business comes from 20% of the customers. That's typically how it goes. So I'm glad that you were able to find out that construction companies were your audience.
Yeah, and a lot of times people assume that I had some sort of construction background, but yeah, I'm useless at picking up a hammer. I don't know what end of the screwdriver to hold. So it's kind of funny that I'm working with these people, but what I do is relate really well to them because they're founder-led businesses oftentimes as well. Some of the companies are quite large, so not so much founder-led, but for the bulk of them, they're founder-led, they're hands-on, practical, down-to-earth people, and I just relate really well. And over the course of the years, I've discovered what works for them and what they need from a marketing agency like ours.
I agree. When you describe these founder-led businesses, you see many of these founder-led businesses, they typically have a trap that they're dealing with, all right? So in those businesses, what ends up, the founder often becomes the bottleneck, of growth. And typically, most founder-led businesses, because the founders are usually technical experts, they are an expert at the craft, they don't understand the business side of things. What ends up happening is they fall into this trap called the referral dependency trap or the growth dependency trap because they don't know how to go about and get new business. And because they don't have the skills, what ends up happening is they end up getting stuck. Have you seen that with your construction clients?
Absolutely, that's a massive trap, and it's good if companies, and they should be getting some form of word of mouth because it means you're doing a good job. Not only are you doing a good job, but you're creating a great customer experience, and they're absolutely foundational for any successful business. But to dial it up a notch, you need that to be those messagings, all that great work that you're doing for the clients to be heard broadly so you can attract quality leads continually. And so otherwise you're living to feast and famine. And certainly in downturns in markets, certainly, there's challenges in the Australian construction industry right now. There's building costs, materials costs, and just so many headwinds and challenges, and these challenges that are always popping up. It's just the nature of any industry that there will be challenging times and there will be boom times. So we've seen boom times, we've seen challenges, we've seen businesses that rely upon word of mouth that really find it difficult in a downturn because they haven't got a steady stream of new business knocking on the door. So there's ways to gear your marketing endeavors so it's aligned and attuned to how you think and how you actually serve your clients, which is wonderful. If you're getting word of mouth, we can amplify that message far and wide. And I think that's the goal of marketing these days, to build trust and authority online. So all that great work, all the great things people are saying about you, think about those as marketing pieces of the puzzle that you can broadcast far and wide.
Yep, absolutely. As you say, you see, for many businesses, when the market is basically in a boom cycle, what ends up happening is they end up getting business just like that. All right, that happens with many local businesses, and construction is something that's always growing, right? All right, every year on year, there's more people that want to construct homes, they want to build offices, so it keeps growing. So what ends up happening is naturally these people tend to attract clients. But it's usually when the market goes through a crisis, like the global oil crisis that we are experiencing today because of the war, what ends up happening is the costs inflate, and when the costs inflate, what ends up happening is that's really when you start to see the strain. And I'm pretty sure that many of you would have built your referrals and using your referrals, you would have built a decent size of business. All right. But as you are scaling, you would have found this bottleneck, with all these things that are happening, all the chaos in the market. This is where it's very important to invest in growth. You have to invest in growth from the day one of the business. You know, that's the most important thing, and that ends up getting neglected sometimes. Again, it's often not the entrepreneur's fault. Sometimes the entrepreneur just doesn't know that they have to do it. They just get business and they just start growing. They think it will keep growing, but then it doesn't go in that trajectory.
Yeah, and the stakes get higher and higher. So certainly as founders, we often become the bottleneck for a whole range of reasons. And one of the reasons why in our world, you tend to avoid what you don't understand. And so because you're great on the tools and you're great at your craft and building the thing that you build, you tend to avoid the things that you don't enjoy. So oftentimes these people are more, they enjoy being out in the field and doing the work. They don't enjoy sitting behind a computer. And these days, whilst they'll of course do that, it's not their natural habitat where they enjoy that spending their time. So you have the tendency to avoid what you don't enjoy or you don't understand. And that means marketing can often be neglected. So that's one of the problems for the construction companies. And also the other problem is just thinking about marketing as an expense rather than it should be an investment, and you should see a return on that investment. And so that's what we see oftentimes when there is a bit of a downturn. There's a couple of different mindsets, and they seem polar opposite, which that they are. There will be those that say, oh, there's a downturn, we better gear up the marketing because we've got to fight a little harder to get more leads flowing through, to get enough work to keep the team busy and active. But there's others who say, oh, there's a bit of a downturn, we've better tighten everything up. Where can we cut expenses? Let's cut some marketing. So same scenario, different mindset. And so, sometimes you legitimately have to cut some costs. But the other thing to think about too, I mean, some of the construction guys, they might be really heavily geared, financed for their building equipment. So there was a company that I know that we were working with, and they had invested millions of dollars in their equipment, the machinery that they need to fulfill their jobs, and they grew really fast, but they were heavily geared on finance, and so that makes them particularly vulnerable if there is a bit of a downturn, because they need their machines out in the field creating income. Otherwise, they're just expenses sitting in the field, in the yard. So you've got to think about these things ahead of time and build some resilience and safeguards, but also have mechanisms that you can dial on and off. And that's why Google Ads, for example, can be really helpful. If you've got a really quiet spot, an advertising mechanism that you can turn on in quiet times, lean times, but turn it off again when you get busy. So you've got that flexibility of almost like turning on and off a tap. And so not every business builds these things, but you really want to focus on building some of these mechanisms in the good times where you've got a little bit of liberty to experiment a little bit, because sometimes it takes time to find the ads that will work for you. And you don't want to be messing around with that when it really is lean. You want to get some of these foundations in place ahead of time so you can be ahead of the game.
Absolutely agree with you, right? So it's during those good times you have to consider investing, and again, it's a classic mindset, right? So sometimes the success of a business is depend on the psychology of the founder. You see, there are many founders who look at marketing as an expense versus marketing as an investment. That's you don't go to the stock market and invest in a stock and expect to make a profit the next month.
Yeah.
You invest it, you probably wait for the a boom cycle to pick up, when the bull run starts, and that's really when you cash in. Or when you invest in a mutual fund, you don't really expect a return right away, right? So
Yeah.
the same way you will have to approach marketing. It's like,
Mm.
although marketing will give you measurable returns in due course of time, it may take
Mm.
3 months, 6 months, or whatever, but it'll give you compounding returns over the course of time. But
Mm.
you have to invest. You have to stop looking at it as an expense. So even
Yeah.
if even if you've just got one or two clients and you've just started your business, it's very important to start investing in marketing from day one. Would you
Yeah.
agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And so you've got to think about, as you said, like investing, there's different ways of investing if you were to liken it to investing. There's some things that need to hit maturity before you get the return, and that can be quite some time, but there's other things that will have growth immediately. And so you've got to think about the strategy in which you're applying and the likely timeline in which it will start to yield a good profit for you. For example, search engine optimization. It's one of the services we provide a lot of, but it doesn't produce an output immediately. It takes time because it's all about earning trust in Google's eyes. So it's not as if we can do something and you get results tomorrow. Not like an ad. I mean, an ad, you can literally have it up and running within hours and you can start to generate some income. But ads are also expensive over the long term. So you got to think about what you need right now for the short term sustainability of your business, but think about the long term as well. And so if you've got the capacity to do so, you want to be investing in search engine optimization ahead of time for the long term and think about it as a monthly ongoing effort for incremental improvement. And so if you're in the construction world, one customer is probably worth, it depends on the nature of the business, but it may be worth a lot of money. So if you can figure out how many customers do I actually have to win from this strategy in order for it to be valuable, and to also think about the lifetime value of a customer. If your business model is smaller projects, but they're recurring projects. So we've got people in the construction world who do more maintenance related tasks, and sometimes they'll work through, real estate agents. So their jobs are small, a couple of $100 here and there, but because they're recurring, it's a different model of a business. So you think about more so the lifetime value of a customer, and for them, it's not even really the customer. So if they're doing maintenance on rental properties, the individual owners of the properties are really their clients, but the source of the income is the agency who delegates the work to the various the contractors. So there's all different models, and there's all different strategies, and there's not one solution that works for everybody. It's all the nature of what your business does, and to figure out what works for you.
Yep, yep, I agree with you. So that's the thing, right? So when it comes to advertising, you have to put some money in and start running some ads so you can get some traction immediately. And then search engine optimization is what will build you the pipeline. Like I've seen cases. I mean, this is applicable for many local businesses, right? You want to use a little bit of ads, maybe Google search ads, and then in addition to that, you want to use some organic SEO. The reason is the ads will feed your pipeline today. The SEO will feed your pipeline 1 year from now. Don't you agree?
Yeah, and they might be the biggest style of job. So what we've found, and it's not always the case, but oftentimes what works really well for ads is your smaller jobs. They can just kick in. They're closer to an impulse buy. It's not something that people research for the long term. They just go find someone who can solve a problem and get it done. They're oftentimes it might be, say you're a plumber and you might do emergency plumbing. Well, that's just often a small job, but, a couple of $100, whatever it is, to go out and fix whatever it is, sometimes just small, but it's needed right there and then. So they're going to call whoever they can call straight away to get the job done. So really you want your ad to show up for that emergency job, run out and get the job done. The cash flow is in your pocket the next day sort of thing. So it's a smaller job, but it's really great for ads because it's closer to that impulse buying decision. If it's, say, you're trying to sell a dream home, you're a builder of luxury homes, and those people are going to look at a fair few competitors, and likely they'll bump into your brand and your business quite a few times before they even make an inquiry. And that's so in those circumstances, search engine optimization is powerful because all of a sudden you're showing up all the time for various things they might be Google searching, but also large language models. We're big on dialing in on that too, because the same strategies we once applied for Google for optimizing for search engines also help you show up in large language models. So you want to be seen as the authority and the trustworthy expert in your industry, in your area, in your field, wherever you work. Because most of the construction people will be somewhat geographically bound. They're local businesses. You know, they can't build on the other side of the planet just yet. So maybe with AI one day and robotics, they might do. But for the most part, they're local businesses.
Exactly. So speaking of this, we spoke about SEO and then we spoke about AEO. You know, typically just walk me through like what are some steps that a construction business can take? You know, they probably serve a certain geography. You know, it could be a couple of pin codes or within a particular boundary. What are some steps they need to do to basically make sure that they are not just listed number one on Google, but also they are listed by the LLMs? Can you just walk me through like some
Yeah.
steps?
So the answer engine optimization really important these days as well. The way to think about it is all the tools are trying to do the same thing, and that's surface the very best information that's laser targeted and focused on exactly what the person is looking for, whether they are asking questions through ChatGPT or another AI platform, or they're Google searching. And Google, of course, use AI as well. They're all trying to surface the same thing, the very, very best information. So you need to publish quality content that is geared around what you do. And the temptation is, and there's even tools out there that will mass produce content at scale in the attempt to attract all the various tools. But it's generic and bland, and all they're doing is collating a bunch of ideas and thoughts from other people and repurposing it into something perceived to be new, but it's not genuinely new. It's not there's no information gain. So you got to think about how am I adding information to this large internet world? So they're the large language models, they're gleaning information from far and wide. What's going to make your information stand out above everybody else? And it's when you're publishing something unique and trustworthy and reliable, dependable. One of the easiest things for construction people, builders, is to think about the work they're actually doing. I always say to our clients, what is it you're working on? What are you building right now? And how can we use what you're building right now as a case study or a story example, something you can publish online to broadcast far and wide the actual work you're doing? Because all of a sudden then you're talking about the exact projects, you're showcasing the work, because if it's something visible, you can have photographs of it or videos if you want to, but also anything that produces proof. So getting great Google reviews, for example, because it's trustworthy. So all these signals, then all of a sudden you're creating content that's genuinely, authentically yours. And whilst you can use AI to polish and enhance and write it in a way that's engaging and so on, it's still your message. So you've got to think about your message as something that, if it's something that only you can speak on, then it's probably going to be a really good piece of content. So that's why I always say to our guys, our clients, hey, what are you building? What are you working on right now? How can we repurpose that into your next wave of marketing efforts?
Yep, absolutely. I agree with you. So I think there's a lot of tools out there that basically say, hey, we will rank you on Google for number one at $47 a month or $97 a month or $197 a month. Now, again, or like you said, all these tools are general purpose tools. They don't necessarily work the way they were intended to. But what really works and what really moves the needle is basically us creating our own content, and basically sharing that. That would be the most effective way, So, I mean, it's not like the construction founder needs to write an article or whatever. Right now, you can, with the way AI is pretty advanced, you can probably just dictate your thoughts into Claude or whatever, and then uh, ask it to repurpose this into an article for your LinkedIn article, for your blog post, or even a video or a carousel for Instagram, whatever that is. So that's how advanced we're at.
It's so powerful, isn't it? And I mean, I often will have creative thoughts when I'm driving around, because it's a time where I'm just sitting with myself and time to stop a little bit. So that's when for me, creative ideas start to flow. So I'll just get my phone open and obviously with hands free while I'm driving around, and start speaking to ChatGPT and start articulating some of my creative thoughts that, and it'll converse with me. We'll have a backward and forward conversation, almost like a human. And then by the time I've driven to wherever I'm going, oftentimes I'll have a piece to publish. It'll be almost ready to copy paste it as a blog post or whatever I want to use it for. Maybe it's a email campaign or something of that nature. But, using the AI tools to capture your thoughts and to refine them is really powerful, but it's really important to set yourself up some guardrails so it's in your voice, in your style. There's consistency with everything you're producing, and use the tools to your advantage, but don't let the tool dictate the message. You need to be the thought leader, but use the tools to enhance what you're saying.
Makes sense. I agree with you. So Wes, let's assume like we're dealing with a construction founder who wants to grow, right? He's been getting referrals. Now he's like, hey, I really want to step out to the next level, right? So what kind of a budget he needs to set aside as an investment for, let's say, Google Ads and search engine optimization? And what is the timeline with which he can expect results and what kind of customers that he can acquire? Just walk me through some
Yeah,
of these.
it can vary a lot depending on the style of business. So there's some construction, some more contractors. They're just doing one aspect of construction. There's a few of them, and they're spending very little on their ad campaigns and only turning them on and off as they need to, as they've got a quiet week coming up, quiet month potentially. They'll turn the ads on and potentially increase their budget, and sometimes they're turned right off because all their team are busy, and so they might only be spending a few $100 Aussie dollars. So that's a little bit less than a US dollar. Yeah, so just a few $100, maybe that's a couple of $100 in US. And so, but there's other clients who will be spending a few $1,000s. And the advantage of when you're spending a few $1,000s, then it warrants more optimization and refinement, because you know you don't want to use all your spend on optimization. When you're only spending a couple $100 a month on the ad itself, we don't want to spend $500 on optimizing it. But once you're spending a few $1,000s, well, then a couple of $100s to optimize it to get the greater return on investment, then the numbers start stacking up in a different way. So you've just got, and for those smaller clients, we'll spend a bit of time to set up the foundations and get the ads right in the first place, but we won't tinker with them all the time, because for us to do that, it would make the expense not warranted for the end customer. So we've got to refine the strategy according to what's going to work best for them.
Makes sense. Great with you. Um, so, uh, so tell me about your company, Uplift 360. What are the services that you offer, and how big is your team? What kind of services that you offer? You could just share that.
Yeah. So we're really big on building your website as the foundational pillar for all your marketing efforts. And the reason for that is it's the one area that you control all the messaging. So social media is powerful, and we really encourage and use social media, of course. But all our social media is geared around bringing people back to the website. You can't have every post link back to your website because they don't like that. No one will see it, the visibility. So you've got to play the game a little bit. But realistically, our goal for social is to get people off social into the website. The goal for the website is to get people off the website. And where do we want them? Into a conversation with humans. Because when you're selling something of a higher dollar value, typically people are going to want to engage and speak to a real live person. Where there's so much push for automation and chatbots and all of these things. But realistically, if someone's going to build their dream home, for example, they're not just going to rely on a chat with a chatbot. They're going to want to talk to someone who understands and appreciates and listens to the nuance of exactly what they're wanting to do. So for most of our clients, we're gearing the website around attracting the conversation. So website's the pillar for us, and then everything else is geared around making sure that website works really well. Search engine optimization, massive service offering for us. So typically a new client will come on board, we'll build the website so it's high conversion optimization, it's attracting Google's attention, it's attracting large language models. Then we'll look at other things around around the peripheral. So that what are we going to do for their social media? Obviously the search engine optimization goes monthly, and not everybody, but some will choose to do the Google ads. We still feel as though ads, you can advertise in social media, but it's cheaper oftentimes for visibility and so on, but it feels as though for our particular niche, and construction, the higher return on investment is still Google Ads. And I think you've got to think about the user intent. If someone's jumping on Google, they're looking to search for something to find a solution, and they're almost ready to buy. Well, oftentimes they are ready to buy something to get that solution done. But if they're on social media, they're not there looking to buy anything. They're there to waste their time. Doom scrolling, as people sometimes call it. So you've got to think about the platform and the user intent for why they're there and how you use the tool appropriately to get the outcomes you're trying to achieve.
What you said is spot on. You have to use the right tools depending on the outcome that we want to achieve. Okay. Now, I know you've worked with a lot of other construction companies, so can you just tell me what's the difference? What is the key difference between a construction company that has scaled profitably that you've seen in front, right? They've come to you, you started working with them, and then they've had massive profitable growth, quarter on quarter, and then they've just been growing. Versus a construction company that has not necessarily tried your services, but they could have gone to some other agency as well. They grew a little bit, but then they end up being stuck. Like, what are the key differences that you've seen?
Yeah, it can be so many different things, and sometimes it's things outside of our control or their capacity. So we can only get the leads flowing through the door, and so if they hit their cap because all their team are on out there doing the work, and the other challenge most companies have got right now is getting skilled workers into these roles, so they can get so much work, but not enough skilled workers to actually fulfill the tasks the jobs that they win. So that's a different challenge. And even some of our clients are choosing to set up their website in a way not just to attract new customers and clients, but to attract the very best team members as well. So and it's just a fairly new phenomenon that we've seen more and more businesses adding a career section to their website to try and engage and encourage team member, potential staff to reach out and attract the very best. So, and to build their brand and, be a place where people want to work. So, those sorts of things. So there's all sorts of roadblocks and obstacles that cause a company not to grow. But I think probably the biggest is the mindset of the founder themselves and their vision for the business. Some businesses just don't want to continue to grow. I mean, we took on a new client last week, I think, or the week before, and he was running quite a large, successful business working mainly for commercial builds in his field. And so, but he didn't want to do that anymore. He was wanting to retire, but just do a little bit of work on the side. And for whatever reason, he chose not to sell his business. He just wanted to do a few smaller tasks. So he was flipping it back to smaller residential jobs, which was, I haven't come across that many times, but it's really important for us to understand their vision of what they're actually trying to achieve. What are their growth targets? Or in fact, in his instance, why was he trying to shift gears to do a smaller type of work and actually scale back his business? So to understand the vision of what they're trying to do, their growth targets or their shrinking targets in his scenario, which is weird, but to understand their vision, so then we can build mechanisms that are suitable for them. That's really important to understand what makes someone tick. Most of us, like you and I, are probably growth oriented because that's how most of us are wired, but not everyone is that way. Some people are just happy to plod along, and that's perfectly fine too.
So I would say, based on what you say, the mindset matters a lot. All right. Some people want to build it for a bigger reason. They want to create impact and they want to grow as massively as possible. There are others that are comfortable with where they are, and that's also fine. There's no hard and set rule on what you want to go. But if you really want to grow, in a sustainable fashion, like again, going back to the previous example, all those businesses that do not want to grow, they may be doing well when the economy is good, but when there's a downturn, they will get affected. So it's pretty important to start being proactive about the marketing rather than being reactive, so you can actually always have a pipeline full. And I also liked the interesting thing that you mentioned about building the careers page and then attracting um, candidates. So I always say this. So in a service business, you always need to get two things right. One is you need to build a client pipeline. You need to have a waiting list full of people wanting to work with you. And then you need to have a talent pipeline, which is basically a bunch of talented individuals wanting to work with you. All right. It's when you balance this both, you can grow and scale your business. And it's not just for construction, it's for lawyers, it's for accountants, it's for every single service-based business out there. You need a mix of both because you basically fulfill based on human labor, all right? So human labor or human capital. So then you need to have a pipeline of human capital to keep doing good work, and then you have to keep attracting the attention of your customers, who would want to work with you. So that's pretty important. Um, right. Wes, do you have anything to share with our audience about construction marketing or business marketing in general?
Yeah, I think for the most part, sometimes businesses will just be reluctant to start to make changes. They'll just keep putting it off. But I think getting started is the key to start where you're at. And sometimes you've just got to start smaller than what you just to get the momentum happening, just to see the results and the improvements and the impact that a few levers, once you pull the right levers, you get the outcome. So I think with anything in business, you've got to build to a level where you can find trusted partners around you who know what they're doing and delegate those roles, just like you do with your internal team members. You've got to assign tasks and let them do their task and not micromanage those jobs, because otherwise you're doing it twice. You're doing it, but they're doing it as well. It's inefficient. So you've got to hire people that you trust will get the right job done. And that way, so for me, whenever I hire people or I have external providers that do things, legal things or accounting, and I hire people that are better than me, better at that one thing that they do. The lawyer I pay for various things from a commercial standpoint, I'm paying them a higher dollar value than I pay myself for sure. But you got to get the best in these roles, and so you can just delegate it and let it be off your plate and out of your mind as well. If you're hiring cheap people, there's a temptation to start to micromanage them. You might save a few dollars, but you'll cost a lot of your emotional energy just trying to manage what they do because you don't truly trust what they're working on.
I agree with what you said because when you hire cheap people, you end up having to micromanage, which defeats the entire purpose of you starting or working to build your business. That's why it's important to bring in talented people, even if it costs a little more. That's what it's again, it's an investment. It's not an expense. All right. So just like how you put money into a mutual fund and then you eventually expect the returns to come back eventually, similarly, you'll have to invest right here in capital in terms of human resources. So then you can get a better output out. Uh, Wes, it was a pleasure talking to you. For those of you who are listening and who want to consider working with Wes, his agency's name is Uplift 360. You can check out the link in the description below, and you could contact Wes. He's available on LinkedIn. He's available on his website. You can schedule a time with him, have him audit your construction business, and then from there, see what you can do to move forward. Wes, any other thoughts you want to share?
Yeah, this has been brilliant, Harry. Thanks so much. The time has flown by, and that means it's been a good podcast. But what I would say is if anyone's listened to the podcast this far, you've obviously got value out of it. So what I would say is give it a share, give it a like. It depends on the platform you're listening. But also think about people in your world, your friends or your family, who might benefit from this piece of content, and share it directly with that person because, this is freely available information, and Harry's doing a great job in his podcast. So give it a like and a share.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for listening in. And Wes, thank you for joining us. Look forward to connecting with you soon.
Yeah, thanks, Harry.